The male protagonist never expected that he would be assassinated by a famous player just after playing a game, and he was already a level 99 boss. You must know that he is only around level 30 now. However, the male protagonist is not afraid at all. Although he is just a newbie in this game, he is an out-and-out master in other games. The skills he has honed cannot be compared with his abilities, and in this recognized masterpiece, all gaps can be made up through operations. This also means that even if you challenge a higher level, it is not a dream. If you can hide, you can hide. If you can't, you can block. But the problem is that leapfrogging is also divided into different levels. The male protagonist knows that he will lose if he is not careful. The only way is to find a chance to return to the city. However, there is no need to think about this at this time. It turns out that as a senior famous player, Arthur has already sealed this road in advance. The male protagonist has no chance to approach the door at all. At this time, he only feels that it is extremely tricky. It would be okay if Arthur is a simple numerical monster. The key is that he knows that the opponent's mind and operation are equally good. It turned out that after a battle, he knew that Arthur was an old friend of his from other games, and of course he was also an out-and-out scumbag. It was originally a game in which players became knights to fight monsters, but because the setting was too worldview-oriented, the drop rate of items was extremely low, and the explosion rate of stones was only 25%. Even the collection of herbs in the novice mission requires 2.5 days of searching in the grass to find the necessary quantity. The difficulty of collecting herbs will be doubled depending on the level. Therefore, because of this, there are not many in the game at all. Normal player. To collect herbs, it is better to rob the NPC store directly, or to rob the player who has just robbed the store. The male protagonist is one of them, and Arthur is the best among them. She directly took control of the entire kingdom in the troubled times and asked everyone to share all the gold and silver treasures equally with her in the future. This is simply worse than the final boss in the game. Be awesome. The male protagonist also met her at this time. In order to overthrow Arthur, he chose a decisive battle. In the end, both sides suffered losses, so they would not know each other without fighting. This is how the two got to know each other. But this does not mean that Arthur will let go. Nowadays, the male protagonist who triggers a unique plot is a hot commodity. Unless she tells the way of triggering it, she will kill the male protagonist until she tells him. This is also what President Azura said. It turns out that Arthur is still the second in command in this association. Just when the male protagonist is thinking about how to break the situation, unexpectedly something goes wrong on Imra's side. It turned out that because the 2.5 minutes had expired, its transformed state could no longer be maintained. Seeing that the unique plot was about to be exposed, just when the male protagonist was caught off guard, the white hair next to him brought inspiration to the male protagonist. Based on his intuition, he knew that the other person was also a big boss, and it was obvious that he could take advantage of this. But at this time, Arthur didn't wait for anyone to prepare. After kicking the purple hair away, the male protagonist immediately called Emulu over and quickly caught it. Seeing this flowing scene, Anim was immediately at a loss. At least he had to take a photo with him. These words instantly reminded the male protagonist of his inspiration. After saying that he would consider it if he could escape, Arthur also reacted, but he didn't take it seriously and used the agility of both sides to cross. He didn't think the male protagonist could escape, but not long after he started, a flame exploded in front of him. When he looked up, it was Anim blocking his way. That's right, he became the hero's helper for the photo. Although this made Arthur a little surprised, he was mostly happy. He recognized Arthur at a glance as the director of the animal team. He had the opportunity to fight against the strong players who couldn't stick to him. Arthur didn't care about the male protagonist. Of course, he didn't really let go. The moment the male protagonist was about to arrive at the door, unexpectedly, 4 people blocked his way. It turned out that this was what Arthur had prepared. They were all high-end players in the Azura Guild. Although their operations were not as good as Arthur, the gap in level and equipment was right in front of them. The most important thing is that the male protagonist fights 1 against 4 at the same time. This is even more difficult for him than Arthur fight. After all, he has to face attacks from all directions. The most important thing is that he also needs to consider the opponent's defense. How to cause damage with his attack power. If you don't solve one of them first, defeat will only be a matter of time. But just when the male protagonist was hesitating about which one to pick, not only did this surprise the male protagonist, but what was even more surprising was the 4-person group from the Azura Guild. They never expected that one of them would die with just one blow. But after seeing the person coming, their doubts turned into trembling. They recognized at a glance that the person who came was a high-end player who was known as having the greatest firepower. The male protagonist didn't understand what this title meant. Just when he was wondering why the other party wanted to save him, he didn't know that at this time, the man in armor was feeling like a deer in his heart. To be more precise, he is actually a female player, and she also knows the male protagonist in reality. It turned out that he had been in love with the male protagonist a long time ago, but because he was shy, he did not dare to find out in real life that the male protagonist was going to play the game he was playing. So he came up with the idea of getting to know him through the game. But what he never expected was that even though he searched the entire novice village, he still couldn't find the male protagonist. Just when he was struggling to no avail, the president sent him a message asking him to put down what he was doing and find a player first. But I never thought that the person in this photo would be the male protagonist. He had learned that the other party only used the name Sang in every game he played, and he seemed to be a newbie. After learning that this person was most likely the male protagonist, Sunraka rushed to the scene, and the current scene happened. I know you know. At the same time, Anim battle also reached a fever pitch. He used his ultimate move as soon as he came up. The power was second to none. The most important thing was that the person who was hit by this move would suffer 5 kinds of abnormal damage at the same time. This is Anim's famous stunt. Seeing Arthur not dodging like this, just when he thought the battle was over, unexpectedly, when he looked again, the magic was absorbed Arthur's body. Not only did he not suffer any harm and the magic was rebounded intact, causing him to be hit by his own ultimate move instead. And soon Arthur also gave the answer. It turned out that all this was the result of his retribution on the Scarecrow. After crushing this prop, it can rebound and hit his own spell. Just when he wanted to just watch Anim die of poisonous hair, the movement behind him caught his attention. After discovering that the person coming was the one with the greatest firepower, what brought him was not shock but excitement. He didn't expect that he would catch such a big fish just by killing the male protagonist. But before he could go to collect the net, Anim unexpectedly stopped him again.